The Battle of Ginchy took place on 9 September 1916 during the Battle of the Somme, when the 16th Division captured the German-held village. Ginchy is 1.5 kilometres northeast of Guillemont, at the junction of 6 roads on a rise overlooking Combles, 4 kilometres to the southeast. After the conclusion of the Battle of Guillemont on 6 September, 14th Corps and 15th Corps were required to complete the advance to positions which would give observation over the German 3rd position, ready for a general attack in mid-September, for which the Anglo-French armies had been preparing since early August. British attacks from the boundary between the 4th Army and the French 6th Army from Louswood north to Ginchy had begun on 3 September when the 7th Division captured the village, before being forced out by a German counter-attack. Attacks on Louswood and attempts to retake Ginchy on 4 and 5 September were also defeated by German counter-attacks. The 7th Division was relieved by the 16th Division and 55th Division on the evening of 7 September, and the 5th Division was replaced by the 56th. Division on the right at the army boundary. On 9 September the British began a bombardment early in the morning but waited until late afternoon to advance, to deny the Germans time to counter-attack before dark. The British assault in the south by the 56th Division and the 16th Division reached Wood, but the attack in the centre was repulsed. On the northern flank, Ginchy was captured by the 16th Division and several German counter-attacks were defeated. The loss at Ginchy deprived the Germans of observation posts, from which they could observe all of the battlefield, and eliminated the salient at Wood, which had been costly to defend, due to observed German artillery fire from 3 sides and the many counter-attacks by German infantry in July and August. The attack on 31 August being the largest mounted by the Germans during the Battle of the Somme. The success of the French 6th Army on 12 September, in its biggest attack of the battle, and the advance of the right flank of the British 4th Army from 3 to 9 September, enabled both armies to make much bigger attacks, sequenced with the 10th and Reserve Armies in September, which captured much more ground and inflicted approximately 130,000 casualties on the German defenders. Background: tactical developments after the capture of 6,000 yards of the German 2nd position on Bazentin Ridge by the British on 14 July. The Germans had reinforced the flanks of the captured ground and built more fortifications between the 2nd and 3rd positions. On the right flank, the British line formed a salient at Longueval and Wood, which ran west to Possières and south to Malt's Horn Farm, the junction with the French 6th Army. The salient was overlooked by German positions from Guillemont to the southeast and High Wood to the northwest. Control of Guillemont and Ginchy also gave the Germans observation of the ground to the south, over the French approaches to the German second line, from the Somme River north to Maurepas and the area between Mal's Horn Farm and Falfemont Farm. German artillery could fire into the salient and the area beyond, where a huge mass of Allied artillery was based and through which the fronts of the 4th and French 6th armies were supplied, over a small number of poor roads. In August, Joffre had pressed Haig to continue with big attacks on wide fronts, but despite conforming to French strategy, Haig had refused to follow these tactics until the British armies were ready, being unwilling to risk another fiasco like the attacks of 22–23 July. The British made a large number of small narrow-front attacks, consistent with the state of training and supply of the British divisions, and tended to approximate wide-front attacks, while concentrating artillery firepower opposite Guillemont, on the right flank of the 4th Army. From late July to early September, many attacks took place to establish the British right flank on Guillemont and Ginchy, ready for a big attack combined with the French 6th Army and the Reserve Army in mid-September. Publication of German casualty statistics for July 1916 showed that 7 of the 12 divisions engaged by the British in July had lost more than 50% of their infantry. Increased optimism at British Expeditionary Force General Headquarters. that the German defense of the Somme front was weakening. GHQ intelligence made a guess of 130,000 German casualties, while Lieutenant General G. MacDonough, director of military intelligence at the War Office, estimated 150,000 and the French 175,000 German losses. The Bavarian divisions south of the Albert-Bapaume road were assessed to have high morale despite heavy losses, but it was believed that there were no more than 5 German divisions left in reserve on the Western Front. A general relief of the German divisions on the Somme was known to have been completed in late August, and the assessment of German divisions available as reinforcements was increased to 8. GHQ intelligence considered a German division on the British front was worn out after 4.5 days, even though German divisions averaged 20 days in the line before relief. Of 6 more German divisions moved to the Somme by the 28th of August. Only 2 had been known to be in reserve and the other 4 had been moved from quiet sectors without warning. News of Falkenhayn's dismissal arrived on the 30th of August and was believed to foreshadow German emphasis on the Eastern Front, making the German armies in France more vulnerable. The wearing out battles since late July and events elsewhere led to a belief that the big Allied attack planned for mid-September would have more than local effect. Prelude. British offensive preparations. The Anglo-French attacks of late July and August had been intended to advance through the uncaptured part of the German second position to Falfemont Farm, Guillemont and Loosewood, preparatory to the capture of Ginchy and Bolo Wood. The British and French armies were to cooperate to capture the high ground either side of the Combles Valley, and the French Sixth Army to reach Maurepas, La Forest, Rancourt and Fréjaucourt. Fighting to the west of Ginchy at Longueval and Delville Wood had begun on the 14th of July and continued until the 3rd of September, when all but the eastern corner was captured. The area between the Wood and Ginchy, known to the German defenders as the Entschnabel, dominated the approaches to the village. An attack from west needed the support of a simultaneous attack northwards on the Entschnabel, to prevent the Germans defeating the attack with enfilade fire. Arrangements for the big offensive planned for mid-September continued, while attacks by 15th Corps and 3rd Corps on Delville Wood and High Wood took place during the 14th Corps operations to capture Ginchy, which added to the strain on British engineer services, pioneer, labour and transport units, and was made worse by German bombardments, directed from the vantage points still in German possession. In the aftermath of the last attack of the Battle of Guillemont, in 14th Corps area, the 56th Division relieved the right of the 168th Brigade with the 169th Brigade from the boundary with the French 6th Army at the Combles ravine to the southern portion of Loosewood. The 168th Brigade sidestepped left to take over part of the line held by the 49th Brigade of the 16th Division, and an advanced trench dug near Loosewood was abandoned. At 11:30 a.m. on the 8th of September, the 56th Division attacked down Combles Trench from Loosewood, advancing a short distance before a German counter-attack at 5:15 a.m. on the 9th of September bombed Emberg to the Wood. British plan of attack. The 22nd Brigade of the 7th Division had been withdrawn for only 2 days, before being sent forward again for the attack on Ginchy. The ground had been torn by shell fire and made muddy by rain, as the brigade took over the south end of Edge Trench and Devil's Trench in Delville Wood on the left, Stout and Porter trenches on the right facing Ginchy, and a battalion in support in Montalban Alley and a reserve battalion in Pommiers Trench. A dawn attack was rejected in favour of midday to mislead the Germans. On the 6th of September a new attack was ordered, in which 14th Corps was to advance to a line from Combles Loosewood Road, the quadrilateral Ginchy. The 55th Division to the north in the 15th Corps area was to support the attack on Ginchy by attacking with the 164th Brigade, between the outskirts of the village and the eastern edge of Delville Wood, then advancing to Hop Alley and Ale Alley. then from Pine Trench to Lager Lane on the road from Ginchy to Fleurs. Third Corps was to take Wood Lane and the east corner of Highwood. A bombardment was to begin on the 9th of September at 7 a.m., with no increase in intensity before zero at 4:45 p.m., to deceive the Germans as to the time of the attack and to deny them an opportunity to counter-attack before dark. The French Sixth Army attack as part of the joint plan to isolate Combles further south, also scheduled for the 9th of September, was postponed on the 8th of September due to supply difficulties. On the 56th Division front, between the Combles ravine and the boundary with the 16th Division on the Combles-Guillemont road, the attack of the 9th of September was to be made behind a creeping barrage from half of the divisional artillery, moving at 100 yards per minute. As the creeping barrage met a standing barrage fired by the other half of the divisional artillery on each barrage line successively, the standing barrage would jump ahead to the next objective. German defensive preparations. The many British nibbling attacks after the 14th of July had been costly to contain, as German defences had been under frequent artillery bombardment, which had turned German positions into crater fields, buried the entrances of dugouts, vaporized barbed wire and demolished trenches. Allied air superiority in artillery dominated the battlefield and kept the German defenders under constant strain and caused many casualties, the most notable being Falkenhayn, who was sacked on the 28th of August and replaced by Hindenburg and Ludendorff, who scrapped Falkenhayn's policy of rigid defense and automatic counter-attacks. German field fortifications had evolved since July from a trench system into an outpost line in shell holes, with supports and reserves further back in shell holes or any cover that could be found. The outpost line, containing 2 or 3 soldiers every 20 yards and the occasional machine gun, was often overrun, after which similar shell hole positions were improvised by the British, before a German counter-attack could be mounted. The hasty German counter-attack was forestalled and the remedy of a well-prepared limited counter-attack was rarely mounted, because of the chronic shortage of infantry, artillery and ammunition. Attempts to link shell hole positions failed, because they were visible from the air and British reconnaissance aircraft directed artillery onto them. Trenches were abandoned during an attack in preference for shell holes further forward. Unobtrusive positions were much harder for British air observers to spot and much more artillery ammunition was needed to bombard areas which were thought to contain them. Trench lines retained their value as rallying points and accommodation, and new ones were built according to the defensive lessons of the Herbstschlacht. Backlines and switch trenches were dug as soon as manpower was available. On reverse slopes with artillery observation posts moved 500–1,500 yards further back. In early September, the relief of the defenders of Ginchy by Bavarian Infantry Regiment 19 was rushed, giving the regiment no time to study the ground. By mistake, the boundary between the 5th Bavarian Division and the 185th Division was placed in the village, dividing responsibility for its defense, which was made worse by some of the soldiers in the 185th Division being retrained gunners, with little infantry experience.